I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I'm going to start with the approval of the minutes. Councilmember Zvonek or Lawson, do you have any changes?
Nope.
All right, we're going to go right into general business. 3A, an update on the airport overlay for Centennial Airport.
Thank you. And Kathy, can I please share my screen?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Karen.
It's okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm sharing.
You are, we can see it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Hancock, a planner in the Planning and Development Services Department. I have two very short items on the agenda this morning. My first item this morning is a request to update the airport influence overlay on the city's zoning map. This slide that I'm showing right now is the city's currently adopted airport overlay for Centennial Airport. The city maintains the airport overlay to make sure that development around 4 area airports is compatible with airport operations. A few months ago, Centennial Airport staff approached the city with a formal request that we update our airport overlay to include more current noise contours. Our current overlay was last updated in 2008. The Federal Aviation Administration has protocol for how these noise contours are calculated, and the contours are provided to the city by the airports. The red patterned area is the airport influence district. Navigation easements are required for all projects and property located within that red patterned area, per the UDO. For this item today, we are not proposing any change to the area that requires navigation easements. As a reminder, navigation easements attach to the property title and let property owners know that their property is located in an area that may experience frequent aircraft overflights and nuisances associated with overflights. The yellow and orange areas have different types of zoning restrictions. For instance, residential uses can be compatible in the yellow area, but our code requires that these residential uses include noise attenuation in construction. Noise attenuation looks very much like energy efficient construction since noise enters through gaps in the building envelope. No residential uses are permitted in the orange areas that are closest to the airport. The white area on the map is the incorporated city limits, and the gray areas are outside of Aurora. These current noise contours do not overlap with the city limits. Let me get my slides working. So the second map is the updated noise contour map that Centennial Airport is requesting that the city adopt. There are no changes proposed to the red patterned area. There are changes to the noise contour areas. These contours also do not overlap with city boundaries. Although neither set of noise contours overlap with city boundaries, it is important to Centennial Airport that the most current information be reflected on the city's zoning map. Because Centennial Airport is an important economic generator for the city, staff is bringing this request to you this morning and asking for your concurrence that the noise contours on the zoning map be updated. Because there is no proposed change to property rights in Aurora, the city attorney's office staff has determined that an ordinance is not required. The question for the committee is, do you concur that we should update the zoning map to reflect the current noise contours from Centennial Airport? That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Karen. Council members, do you, how do you want to answer her question? Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, and I'm fine with moving.
I don't either. Same with me, Karen. That will conclude that. Go ahead and go right into your 3B here, the resolution to transfer certificate of designation.
So happy to do that. Prior to 2012, the city did not permit any waste treatment or disposal land use within the city limits. In 2012, a new business owner approached city staff with a request that we permit a new biomedical waste treatment use in Aurora. The more staff learned about this new technology and the proposed location in an industrial zoned area of the city, it made sense to change our code to permit it. The technology uses ozone to treat the biomedical waste, which is very effective at removing pathogens, and the byproducts from waste treatment are water and oxygen. The technology also significantly reduces waste volume. Even better is that the whole process takes place in a fully contained machine inside of a building. By statute, the state regulates all waste treatment and disposal uses. This is a photo of the machine. The zoning change and documentation required by the state was all finally approved by City Council by early 2014, and the business has operated successfully since that time. The property has had no code enforcement violations. They maintain compliance with all state and city regulations, and they've operated within their license parameters. This biomedical waste treatment facility is located near the Fitzsimmons Anschutz campus, and the technology is currently the only one in the state of Colorado. This second slide shows what other biomedical waste treatment looks like and what ozonation treatment looks like. On the left shows what is transferred to the landfill after traditional biomedical waste treatment, and on the right shows material generated after biomedical waste treatment using ozonation technology. Waste volume is significantly decreased. After ozonation treatment, the waste is shredded and not recognizable as such. Recently, the business sold to Trilogy Med Waste, headquartered out of Texas. Even though the zoning was resolved in 2012, the city can't let the new owners operate in Aurora without following state statute, which requires that the city issue a certificate of designation. The former business owners received their certificate of designation in 2014, and now to get this business up and running and generating revenue, we would need to transfer the certificate of designation to the new owners via a resolution. This business has the one and only certificate of designation in the city. The item I'm bringing to you this morning is a draft resolution that will transfer the certificate of designation to the new owners. They will operate the business essentially the same manner as the previous owners. Based on a review of their engineering and environmental plans, the state has recommended that the city approve transfer of the certificate of designation. And to be clear, this process to issue and transfer the certificate of designation is a state requirement and not regulated by the UDO. The state opened a 30-day public comment period during the review of the engineering and operations plan, and no public comments were received. The question before you this morning is, does the committee wish to move this draft resolution to the City Council study session for review by the full council? And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, Karen, thank you. Council members, do you have any questions and do you wish to approve this?
I approve.
Same, no questions.
Same with me. Thank you so much, Karen, for both of those presentations. We will go on to item 3C, development review update, workload, and resources.
Thank you, Councilmember. This is Jason Batchelor. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So while Todd is pulling up the presentation, this is just an update. This is an update on a couple different things. So one is kind of the current status of development review. So both kind of what we're seeing for workload, what we're seeing for performance, what we're seeing for revenues and expenses, and then also an update on the items that we've identified as part of the red tape reduction committee. So we're going to provide that update. And then finally, this item will, as a response to those workload and performance numbers, it's going to be a request for some additional staff, and I'll go into that process. So kind of see the agenda there. So the next one is the Development Review Fund is, again, we've set up the fund because council has told us that they want development to pay its own way. So we take all of the fees associated with processing development applications. It goes into the development review. So that represents the revenue. And then all of the staff that are dedicated for reviewing projects, all of the consultants that we do when we hire an outside consultant to help assist with that workload, that all goes into the Development Review Fund. So that we're meeting that policy direction from council that development pays its own way. So next slide. So this kind of shows you both this is the pro forma. So this shows you both the revenues and the expenses for the last couple of years, and then kind of year to date, both the budget and then what we project. So through May, we have not closed out yet June. So through May, through the first 5 months of the year, our revenues are trending over what we had budgeted. So that is in keeping with what we have continued to see, which is very strong development activity throughout. And then similarly, we're also seeing our expenditures trend over. And so that is largely due to the fact that to meet that increasing workload, we have continued to both from a staffing perspective and from a third-party contractor, continue to hire folks to make sure that we are doing our best to keep up with our resources to meet that very high volume and demand on the development side. So you kind of see those numbers and where we think we're going to be for the year. Next slide. So this slide shows us both workload and performance in terms of how we're doing, and it shows you the different areas. You'll see that in general, what we're seeing is, again, very, that far right column shows you what we're seeing in terms of workload numbers. And so we are seeing, again, very high volumes and increasing workload in 2022 over 2021. And as a reminder, 2021 was sort of historically high workload demand. So we are continuing to see very strong development activity pretty much across the board in all sectors. And so we are seeing that generally remain very high. And then I think you'll also see in there in some of the performance numbers, as we've discussed in the past, we have some areas that are doing well, but we also have some areas that we've struggled on, particularly earlier in the year. I think you all heard about those as part of the Red Tape Reduction Committee, and that is the challenge in front of us, is to make sure that we are raising those numbers that are not meeting the standard. So that has been the focus, particularly over the last 3 to 4 months, and the outcome of that Red Tape Reduction Committee is to make sure that we are meeting the expectations of council, of the development community, and of staff, that we are providing timely review, the overwhelming majority of the time. It's obviously, you can kind of see those numbers there. Next slide. So this is kind of now transitioning into that Red Tape Reduction Committee items. And so as we've talked about, these are the 4 focuses areas of performance within the development review function. You can kind of see those there. So next slide. And then, as we discussed, we presented previously to council, we've identified a number of different initiatives. And what we wanted to do is start now grouping those by those that we consider complete and done, and then those that are in progress. And that's what we're going to be reporting on regularly to PED, is these initiatives. That was part of the direction from the resolution adopted by council that came out of the Red Tape Reduction, was that we provide regular updates. And so we're going to do that. So you can kind of see here, these first 5 items we think are complete. So that includes development review governance. So this is making sure that we have senior management across all the different departments that are involved in this. We are meeting regularly to look at process issues, workload issues, and we're staying on top of that. So that process is complete and stood up. It is getting focus from, again, at the most senior levels to make sure that we are staying on top of it. The next item there is an expedited review process. So that has been stood back up. That is something that we had suspended that during the pandemic, and that is now reinitiated and available for projects that meet those criteria. And so that is something we've stood back up. We know we heard loud and clear that the expectation from some of our developers that we be available for in-person meetings, and that is available. If folks want to meet in person, we will meet in person. If they want to meet hybrid, we will meet hybrid. If they want to meet virtually, we will meet virtually. We are meeting the demands of our customers. So if they want in-person meetings, we will make those available at request. And so then that's in place. The other thing we've heard is that for our pre-application meetings, that those are not mandatory. They have never been mandatory, and we are making sure that we continue to relay that. And then beyond just that, we're actually actively searching for projects that perhaps request pre-application meetings, and we're looking to take those out. And we're actually looking to reach out to those folks and say, hey, we know you've requested it. We actually think this is one where if you want to, we're happy to meet, but we also think that, we can, answer any questions you may have, and this does not need to go through a pre-app. So we are, again, actively looking to, sort of for those, to make sure folks know that they're not required, and in some cases where we don't even think they may be needed. And then finally, on this slide, there is the item for third-party inspections, and we have done that for third-party inspections, and so we will continue to do that. We'll look for workload issues, and if we need to bring on third-party inspectors due to workload, we will do that. Next slide. This next one is we had a request to eliminate the temporary certificate of occupancy extension fee, and that is done. So you can kind of see there that's a more recent development. So beginning just last month in June, we will no longer administer that for single family, and so that is case and that's complete. So now we're moving into some of those items that are in progress. As you heard from Laura Perry and her team, we are in the process of reorganizing Public Works. So we have transferred drainage to Aurora Water. So that reorganization is complete. And then you kind of see some of the other aspects are in progress, and you can kind of see those different components and where we're at in terms of the implementation. The final one on that slide is digital Mylars. We have had successful meetings with Adams County, Arapahoe County, and Douglas County, and we are in the process of actually doing the testing on a entirely digital process, so we no longer have to print Mylars, and we anticipate being able to go live in the next few months here. So again, good progress on that one, and that's one that we hope to complete here in the very near future. Next slide.
Jason, the slide changed. I think this is the one you wanted.
There we go. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, ma'am. So then the next one is we have a major initiative to update our guidance and reference manuals, and then you kind of see that we've now provided a little more detail because that's a pretty broad topic, and so we've kind of broken out both for the drainage manual, the UDO, roadway design, as well as a number of other items. We've kind of broken that individually, and we'll provide individual status updates on those. Those are in progress, and those are the ones that we'll be updating council on, and PED in particular, over the coming months, but those are underway. You can kind of see the status on those. And the final slide on that one is trying to implement something that really gets to our plan review comments, tracking, and scorecard. And so that really looks at, even you saw back on the earlier slide where we talk about our performance, that really breaks it down into the different components. And the intent of this last item on this slide is to really get to, well, what was the total time for a project, and really looking at a project from when they submitted all the way through, and not necessarily just the different components, or different reviews within that, because you might have a planning review that it was on time, you might have a public works review that was on time, but in totality, what was that project done? So we're looking at a scorecard and a way to sort of track this on a project by project basis. So that's what that project's going to report on. We anticipate continuing to work on that, and we will look for implementation of that later this year. Next slide. So these are items here that you'll see. So this is a third-party referral. So we're working with our outside agencies on that process. That's underway. We are looking at continuing to develop our intake checklist so that we have written checklists of what's required from applicants when they submit, so that our requirements are very clear and understood. We think that will help with a lot of the concerns we're having, both from a staff perspective, where we're getting incomplete submittals, and also from frustrations we're hearing from the development community and consultants as to what is exactly required. So that's something that is underway, and we'll continue to work on. Large project reviews, that's something that actually we've got underway for a number of different projects, and we're going to continue to document that process, and we think we'll be able to go live here in the next few months in terms of taking that broader beyond just the handful of large projects that we've done. We're going to document exactly what that looks like, what qualifies, and be prepared to go from there. We are then, as part of both reviewing checklists and manuals, we're going to be looking at our timelines and clocks to make sure that we are not getting late comments. So that will be something that probably after we get through the checklists, after we get through those manual updates, we're then going to be looking at sort of that those timelines and clocks to make sure that we are meeting our requirements, and then can we revise those. So milestone approvals are looking at our standard review processes to include approvals at defined milestones throughout the submittal process. We again probably have to get through that guidance manuals and checklists as well as our plan intake before we implement that. So it's probably a 2023 project. And then finally, we are looking at a multi-department review process to again sort of look at a individual project to make sure that that it's not getting held up by different silos and the different kind of the number of different agencies. And so this is a different approach that we'll take. We'll probably start that later this year, and that will continue into 2023. And we will be talking to you all as we develop that. We'll also be working with the development community on what their pain points are, and then how this process could help us with some of those. Next slide. This is just showing you that timeline, just in terms of kind of what that looks like over time. So again, we've got a number of items that are checked off and complete. We've got a number of them in progress, and so we'll be back in the coming months to hopefully report on progress and go from there. Next slide. So now we're going to transition into looking at our development and review staffing. So you've kind of seen over time how we've staffed up. That is consistent with workload. And so we have this year in particular, we are augmenting our existing staffing with contract services for third-party review. We're currently doing that for engineering, drainage, real property, and traffic. And so those are all underway right now, and you kind of see our staffing. So even with those staffing numbers, that'll take us to the next slide. We think we need some additional staff. And so the way we've set up the development review fund is we have the ability, we have what we call non-departmental units. And so these are FTE that have been authorized as an FTE, but they're not funded. We keep those FTE that council authorizes in non-departmental, and they're sort of a undefined FTE. And what we really want to do is what council and the policy says is that as we see workload increase and as we need to hire additional staff to make sure that we are meeting our timelines and meeting the workload, we'll come to PED and we will request to essentially pull down those FTE that are authorized but not funded. We'll come to you all, explain both where we're at on workload, where we're at on performance, and why we need to add additional staff. And so that's what we're doing here today. So we'd like to talk to you about pulling down 8 of those FTE that are currently sitting there waiting for approval of council. And you can see those there. So with this, I'm going to let Laura talk a little bit about the request in both Aurora Water and Public Works, and then she'll throw it back over to me to discuss the planning FTE.
Good morning, Chair Jurinsky, Council Laura Perry, Deputy City Manager. So I'll start with the drainage requests. So the goal here you'll see for water and public works is really staying ahead of workload, meeting our on-time metrics, and meeting customer service needs. So for water specifically, with the public works reorg, that consolidated team is responsible not only for plan review, but FEMA reports, reviewing preliminary drainage reports, master drainage reports. And the need for these additional positions is to decrease staff overtime and increase our ability to meet on-time reviews for drainage. And so based on workload and analysis around what we're seeing come through the pipeline, we are requesting 3 FTEs to accomplish the on-time metrics, as well as work through other tasks like updates of the drainage manual to move forward on the requests and recommendations from the Red Tape Committee to overall improve the process. And these positions will provide that capacity to achieve that. Moving down to Public Works. So for the building division, there are 2 requests for 2 new supervisors It's important to note that the supervisors in building are also working supervisors, so they also engage in plan review. So for life safety, that team again is seeing a large increase in workload, and the supervisor position is needed to handle the daily supervisory issues to allow for the life safety manager to engage in advisory services and other needed tasks that the manager needs to accomplish, and also to maintain customer service levels. So the building division has continued to maintain very high performance and on-time metrics and serve our customers very well. And this position will support that on the life safety team and the safety plan reviews. Next, the permit center supervisor. So as Jason mentioned, as you all heard, we're consolidating planned intake in the permit center, which is under the building division. And that entails moving over our real property easements, our license agreements, small cells, and civil plans. So that workload is moving into that team. And an additional supervisor is needed to perform the daily quality control checks, training of staff, management of staff, and as well as customer service. And then similar to the life safety supervisor, the permit center supervisor is also a working supervisor and will be engaged in managing that workload for intake on that team. And then last for Public Works is our plan review manager. And this position is a new position that will report directly to the new deputy director of development review in Public Works. And this position is solely focused on ensuring that we are meeting our performance, that we are providing consistency in the organization around process improvements, policies, criteria, et cetera. And they're really the operational manager of the new development review team. This position is critical to fulfilling a lot of the upcoming work that's needed in the new development review division. And we are proposing an ad for the engineering team for the plans review manager here. And with that, Jason, do you want to wrap up with planning?
Thanks, Laura. Kind of continuing that theme. So within planning, we're looking to add a planning supervisor. As Laura said, all of our supervisors are working supervisors. And one of the things that Janine and Brandon have been looking at is sort of the span of control of our supervisors and making sure that, you know, the number of staff that they're supervising is appropriate and you know, sort of workable and manageable. And one of the concerns we heard out of the red tape process was that we want to make sure that we are getting senior level review early in the process. And we think one of the keys to that is making sure that that means that our managers and supervisors have, again, a manageable and workable span of control. So with that, we think we need to add a supervisor so that, again, that they can, you know, make sure that they're reviewing their staff and we're getting those comments early. We think that's going to help us, again, avoid those late comments, and we're making sure we're getting that senior level review early in the process. And so this is going to help us with that. And then the project coordinator is a position that's actually going to help us make sure that our planners are focused primarily on reviewing. So we've got a couple of project coordinators down there. This would give us a third. And then this would, again, be primarily focused on all those tasks outside of, you know, doing the actual review. Again, really is going to help us focus both our planners and our supervisors, again, making sure that they are focusing all of their efforts on getting timely review done, right, good customer service, and doing that. So those are the two positions that we're requesting in planning. Those are the 8 positions. If you all are, if the committee is okay with that request, then the next step would be I would send essentially a summary of this request to all of council to let them know that we are, you know, per the policy that council had adopted a few years ago, that we would be pulling down these 8 positions, again, out of the non-departmental sort of set aside. We would be putting them in the appropriate departments, and then we would move forward with hiring them. So that's it on that slide. And next slide. And we'll take any questions you all may have.
All right, council members Lawson and Zvonek.
Yes, Councilmember Jurinsky, I have a couple questions, if I could ask.
Yep.
Okay, Jason, thank you for the presentation. Just a question on the roadmap and the in-person meetings. I know that I've talked to a few developers that still have challenges with in-person meetings, and I understand because I don't understand how you can really do a lot of this review process online, because when you're looking at maps and different things like that, you know, to me, you got to sit out and look at things. But the city, there's really still people who are still working from home, and some of the complaints are not, well, it could be a complaint, but it also could be just a question is, it's kind of hard when some developers have to go to multiple departments and talk with different people and trying to get those connections. So I know that you have this on here and it's the decision of the developer, but there's still some struggles with that I'm hearing in the development community about how the city is not really, I mean, we have people there, but the city isn't as vibrant as it used to be. I can tell you that, in my opinion. So it's kind of hard for people to move from department to department because, of course, we do have, you know, they can't get up in the elevator. So we understand that because of safety and public safety precautions. But it's also been hard to connect with different people that they have to work on a plan or work on whatever they're working on, a site plan. So I guess, I know you have this in the roadmap description. I know this has been brought up before, and I know that you'll be updating the committee, but how has that changed or evolved since we've even discussed it about a couple months ago? And sorry
Sure.
for the long,
So I think
long
there's
spiel, but just.
no, we get it. No, I think so. There's a couple things there. So one, I would say that in terms of multiple departments, part of that is that's the function of the Office of Development Assistance, is that we don't need developers to be experts in bureaucracy. So we, typically when folks have an issue, we tell them to go to their ODA project manager, and then really ODA is responsible for either getting questions answered, via email, setting up a meeting, if that's what needs to happen. And so that is something that they do routinely and regularly on an ongoing basis, and sort of a project by project, because every situation is different. Sometimes it can be handled through kind of a quick email, a quick phone call, and other times you need you do need a meeting. And so if Jacob's on, I'd ask Jacob to kind of touch base on a little bit on that in terms of their experience and what they've been seeing. So that's on that front. In terms of what that looks like going forward, I would say that I think if you have examples of that, we'd love to know who's having problems, because if we can identify what those problems are, that helps us kind of fix them. We know that's a generalized issue or complaint we've heard. And so I'm not sure if that's something they've experienced recently, or if again they're going back to something that was perhaps a few months old, and we've since we've made those in-person meetings available. So if we can get some examples of that, that'll help us make sure that the processes we're setting up, we can address them specifically. And so, Jacob, if you're on, I'll let you talk a little bit about how you guys approach those that problem solving process.
Sure. Hey, Jason, this is Jacob Cox. I'm the manager of ODA. So yeah, I have project managers that are assigned to every project that comes in the door at the city, and we certainly, as Jason mentioned, kind of offer that spectrum of options in terms of meeting with developers. And so, we're finding that a lot of the consultants out there working are kind of liking the idea of being able to jump onto a quick Microsoft Teams call. I think that's added a lot of convenience out there in the consulting world, but certainly we're doing more meetings, especially the last few months in our office, with some hybrid options or some large group meetings. So we're doing some large workshop meetings now back in the office. So we really try and, if there's specific examples, as Jason mentioned, please let us know. Happy to reach out and provide some due diligence on that. But yeah, we're trying to absolutely offer developers whatever options are convenient for them to meet those needs and take away those silos, so that we can kind of provide a holistic approach on their project specifics. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else, Councilmember Zvonek, do you have anything?
Yeah, just one question on the FTEs. Are there any of those roles that could potentially be filled with contractors? First thing I want to say is I want to make sure that we have adequate staff to get through the development process. It's critical. Just want to make sure that before we ever add FTs, we're always thinking through, can something be done on a contract basis before we add them? And I assume the answer is yes, but have to ask.
No, it's a great question. We actually, in preparation, the city manager asked that same question. And so what we're finding actually is that our consultant community is equally tasked. They are having some of the same challenges we are having in terms of hiring staff and capacity. So I know both Laura and Public Works have had some of those discussions. I'll let them talk a little bit, primarily where the bulk of our contracting out is going, and so I'll let them talk a little bit about what they've witnessed in terms of capacity for third-party contractors.
Sarah Young, I don't know if you're on today. If you want to speak to drainage specifically, I know you've done a lot of due diligence on that.
Laura,
while you're waiting for Sarah, I can talk briefly as to our landscape reviews. Sorry, I've got two screens going here. Let me move you. We recently contracted to have landscape reviews and some of our residential done by contract. And we took the last hours of the consultant that they had available. And I think it was about 30 hours a week. So that's the max we're getting there, just by one example.
And I can chime in to speak for Sarah. I know she did do a lot of due diligence, reaching out to different contractors, and the response back to us was we have no capacity to add on any additional work at this point. Folks are inundated. They're at their max in terms of workload capacity. But we do actively utilize our contractors, as Jason mentioned, for engineering, real property, and the ones that we do have for drainage to assist us and augment staff in reviews. And it's a balancing act that we're consistently monitoring through metrics and workload metrics and performance metrics, and we'll continue to do so moving forward.
No other questions for me. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thanks, Dee. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question still?
I do. Thank you so much. Two questions. Quickly on the fees. Did that include review fees for planning and engineering in the entitlement process?
I guess, are you talking about revenues or are you talking about the TCO extension?
I'm talking about revenue on review fees.
Yeah, so it includes any of our development fees. So that does include fees that folks pay for development application reviews, and so that includes the revenues for that. It includes revenues for building permits. It includes those revenues. What it does not include, typically the other major fees and expenses you see associated with development, either our impact fees or our connection fees in the water utility. And so those don't come to the development or review fund. Those both go to either the water capital fund or the capital projects fund, where they are accounted for and used in accordance with the ordinances that establish
and
those
then
fees.
Like architectural fees that go somewhere else as well.
Architectural fees. Any fees that are associated with the development review go into that. So I'm not. I guess in terms of architectural fees, Janine, Todd, do we charge an architectural fee, or is that sort of part of our development application
I was told
review?
$1,000 per house on average.
I'm not that I don't know if we charge a specific fee for that. If you can get us an example. Now, I do know what we do have is we have architectural standards, whether it's masonry or other things like that, that are part of our development standards, and those certainly may add costs to the cost of a project. But I don't know if we're charging a fee for that. Janine, thoughts on that one?
I will need to look into that and get back to you. That's part of what I'm doing with working with the consultant to look at our processes. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, and then my second question real quick is back to the FTEs. I know we lost Heather Lamboy in planning. So how many do we currently have? I know you're trying to add 3 or 2.
So this would, again, on the project coordinators, we currently have 2 project coordinators. This would add a third. And I would say similarly in the development review, we currently have 2 FTE. One of them is Stephen Rodriguez, who's still there. The other one is Heather Lamboy's old position, and we are in process of advertising and filling that position. And then this
So we only
request
have
is to
one?
add we only have 1 filled. We have 2 authorized, and we're in the process of filling that second one. And then this one would add a third supervisor. So Janine, anything to add to that one?
You got it correct.
And then Heather's been gone 3 months or 2 months?
About a month and end of May, so a month and a half.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Jason, I guess the only question I have is, I know you laid it out before, but can you just say again, some of these fees that you guys have already done away with and some of these processes that have already been updated, changed, we're actively letting the development community know about this, right? Someone is?
Yes, and so we meet every other month with what we call the Joint Task Force, which is typically everything from sort of large home builders to developers that have major efforts, and so there's normally a few dozen people that are in the invite list with that, and I think that's what we've used to kind of let them know that the TCO extension fee was done away with. Todd, Jacob, you guys want to add any more color to that one?
That is on our next agenda, which is early August. I think we're 3 weeks away.
Okay.
Perfect, and that'll be a pretty good update for the development community.
Councilmember Jurinsky.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if there's somebody from the communications team on here, but I know that they have been working on a website that's going to be specifically tracking all the progress that we made and the updates from the Red Tape Reduction Committee that included the elimination of some of these fees. It's on our, I believe it's on our homepage for the city, but it's Aurora Here for Business. And I think it'd be helpful to get that out to people who are on this call and the Business Advisory Board and others to share that website, because it'll continually be updated and continue to allow us to track the progress.
Yeah, and I saw that Here for Business link, and I greatly appreciate it. I just want to make sure that we're actively engaging with the development community and not just putting out there, hey, you can come to our website and see what we're doing. They had a lot of complaints, and so I want them to know they don't really just get to sit around and complain anymore. The city is actively working to change processes and eliminate fees and working very hard. And so I just hope that we are engaging them. With that, we will go ahead and move on to item 3D, the retail presentation.
All right, let's see if I can get this up on the screen. I'm going to be doing this. This is going to be a slightly different presentation than we normally do. This is going to be about ICSC. So this says that if I can start this. This is going to bring it up. Can everybody see that?
No.
No. Okay, great. So let's see how this works. All right. So if I can't bring it up on the screen here and present, is it present online, Kathy?
Are you sharing the right screen, Bob?
Oh, I see. Okay, like this. Let's see if that works.
There we go. We see it now.
Now you see the whole thing?
We see
Okay,
it.
so if I go from presentation into presentation mode, present from beginning.
It's in presentation mode, Bob.
It is? Okay.
So, and the screen that's showing is meeting with owners of existing centers.
Okay, so now we're at the beginning?
Hold on a second. No, you're not at the beginning yet.
All right, so I'm not sure if this is going to work properly.
It's do you have a screen up on your
Yes, I have the opening screen up on my.
Okay. Does it have a
computer.
red line around it? Or,
Yes.
It's on there. It's just not at the first page.
Okay. So is there any chance you could bring it up, Kathy? Can you bring up your copy? This doesn't appear to be working from here.
Okay, while you guys work on that in the meantime, why don't we have Chance? She looks like she's the only one for miscellaneous matters that wanted to give a report. Chance, do you want to give a quick update for the Havana bid while we're working on getting
Sure.
this up?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Chance Horiuchi on Havana Street. Thank you always for letting me do this quick update. I won't read all of the new and closed businesses, but I just wanted to let you know that the Havana Tower owner is a Nigerian owner and is actually looking to open a primary care clinic in the building in the next few months. He also relocated his home health care and his actual corporate offices to the Havana Tower. A new Mexican seafood restaurant is finally going into that former Village Inn. Don't have an opening date. There are a lot of new leases that will be going into AMCAP, actually the large space, the former Xfinity store, and also the hair salon space will be fulfilled by the summer. Unfortunately, DMZ Pub, which was known for their Korean chicken wings, closed, and the new ownership is Mr. Tang. It's been very popular. It just opened, I believe, July 7th. It's like a Korean specialty soup restaurant. It's been already a destination restaurant. I've heard quite a few people from all over Colorado drive out to Aurora just to try this restaurant. New ownership at Shiny Blinds, which is a showroom on Havana Street, new ownership at a new nail salon. I think with COVID, we've had a lot of new ownerships. Unfortunately, Sam's, Fantastic Sam's closed. I think it was a corporate choice, and that lease is now available in that King Super shopping center. Come and Go just reached out. We will be doing an on Havana Street district marker sign and will include a 8x8 concrete pad to be in the Art in Public Places Art2See program in 2024 to 2026 after the property is redeveloped by 2023. And then lastly, we have a new karaoke bar, Chinese cuisine restaurant that opened also in the old Buckingham. The Art2See program is still moving forward for this year. We actually just completed a new art mural at the TLJ building, the Chula Jors building at Havana Exchange. And then quickly, we have a frozen treats giveaway for $500 or $500 in gift cards to Frozen Treat Shops. National Ice Cream Day is July 17th. And this Saturday is the first date of the Havana Street Global Market. This is actually put together by Bonfire Events. If anyone would like to join, I'm actually doing 100 free sambusa samples. There's going to be an Ethiopian coffee ceremony. And then High Altitude Martial Arts will actually be providing a kickboxing class where everybody will receive a Milk Row gift card for participating in the class. And thank you for my very quick update.
Perfect. Thanks, Chance, for the pulse you keep over there on Havana. Bob, do you have your presentation ready to go?
Kathy, it looks like you've brought it up.
Is it sharing? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So this is the opening page, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. So thanks for inviting us to present about the International Council of Shopping Centers show that we go to every year. This is not going to be my normal retail presentation where we go over sales and everything. This is going to be specifically about the biggest show that we go to every year to present Aurora to the world. Next slide. All right. So the International Council of Shopping Centers has actually recently changed their name. They've been the International Council of Shopping Centers for 60 years, and I've been going to their shows for over 30 years. They changed their name to change with the times. They're pivoting towards the new world where retail shopping malls are changing into much more mixed-use projects and parts of much larger projects. And so they've changed the name from International Council of Shopping Centers to Innovative Commerce Serving Communities. A little bit of a tricky name, but they didn't want to give up ICSC.org apparently, so they decided to change the name to this. And this reflects the new view that retail is part of a much larger development community that creates a sense of place. And so they're now trying to attract more municipalities and more other players that go to ICSC. And we've been going to ICSC for a while, but other municipalities are now starting to show up. This is a little bit of a review of kind of who we meet with when we go there, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the welcome packet when we're done. Next slide. All right, so this is a view of of ICSC from the upper tier. This is one of 3 convention halls. There is probably about a half a mile straight back. And this is what a lot of the booths look like. They're very corporate. These are usually developers and owners that are trying to show off how much money they have. They usually have a very fancy booth, very kind of either modern looking or very old school kind of mahogany cherry wood kind of stuff. But when we go to the show, we're not trying to show how much money we have. We're trying to show this is a very exciting place to do business. And so next slide, you're going to see Aurora's booth. This is what our booth looks like. Very different than everything else. And this booth got so much attention from other municipalities that we had more people walking up, taking a picture of themselves in front of our booth than probably any other booth in the place. Aurora, Illinois even showed up and was kind of jealous that we had such an amazing presence, because most cities show up with a little Walmart fold-out table and a little pop-up tent, like 10 by 10, that looks like something out of a soccer game, and they show up and just try to hand out brochures. So we had a presence there that blew people away, not just other cities, but also developers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. These are the groups that we meet with, and we'll go through each one of those in a second. Next slide. Okay, so we meet with developers specifically to attract developers to specific areas of the city. A good example would be we met with Aurora One, and they're doing business up in the Northeast over by Murphy Creek. We also get a chance to present to larger developers like Aurora Highlands, who come in and talk to us about their overall mix. They have a much larger project, and they're talking about residential, commercial, what should they do with the commercial? Sometimes they're asking us about whether they should put industrial offices and some of these other things in there. So we get involved in some of the master planning at the very beginning when they're really asking about where's the retail go and what retail do you think we should have here? And of course, we get to present all of our services to them, and we have ongoing discussions with them even when we're not at ICSC. Next slide. All right, so the retailers and the merchants. One of the things that we have to do is we have to tell our story. And many of these folks are from out of state, and they've heard of Aurora, and they may not have heard of Aurora the way we want them to know Aurora. So we're very much presenting our story to them. We present a lot of data at ICSC, and we're going to get into that in a little bit of placer data. But one of the best things that we can do is show these developers and retailers and merchants that we can assist them in understanding their market. Southlands will be an example of that we're going to show in a minute. But in many cases, the market that the retailers are looking at and the restaurants, which we'll get to in a second, they are looking at demographics. They are not looking at the level of information we have. And we can show them how each ward has an area that they should locate in, because each ward not only is the demographics within a half a mile or mile of where you put a pin in the map, it's also all the people that visit that area, and we'll show that in a minute. But our ability to offer technology to our merchants and our developers is a big deal, and we'll show that. Next slide. Okay. All right, I think we skipped a few. All right, so this is a heat map of basically Southlands. And so when we showed this to Southlands, this was right at COVID. We had another map that showed sort of the seasonality curve of their sales, but they track their own sales. We track their visits, because we could geo-fence their entire center and or any individual retailer and tell you where the customers are coming from, how often they come, and that's what this heat map shows. So with Southlands, if you would have asked Southlands before they saw this map, where did they think their customers coming from, they would have said that dark red part, where those are the folks that come all of the time. But take a look at how many people are coming from Littleton, Englewood, Lakewood, even Golden. Now they have to pass 3 major shopping centers. South Glen, they have to pass Park Meadows, they have to pass Southwest Plaza, all to get to Southlands. That's phenomenal. If Southlands did not know they were attracting from that far, now they can start to market their events that they're having way out to the western side of town and draw far more people. You could also see the provisional shoppers way out on the eastern plain coming in and shopping with a vengeance, because that is such a distance for them to travel that when they come in half as often, but they spend twice as much money. And so the provisional shoppers out on the plains, this is very good information for the Southlands folks. They like this information so much, plus the other information we showed them, they went out and bought placer data for themselves because they found this so interesting. Placer, but we offer placer to everyone, not just developers, is existing owners and to retailers. So as an example, if a retailer or a restaurant came to us and said, we want to locate it in Aurora, but we're not exactly sure where we want to go, we can show them where all of their customers are if they know their customer, or we can geofence one of their other locations and tell them who their customer is. A lot of the smaller retailers and restaurant operators don't have the money to pay for this kind of information. So when they're coming to us, the fact that we can provide this and other cities don't makes them want to do business in Aurora. And so this placer data stuff is extremely important to us. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. I think this might be the last slide in this one. Next. Okay, we switched them up a little. All right, so why do we go after retail, of course, but we also go after restaurants. And why do we go after restaurants so significantly? Well, restaurants have the ability, if you took a 5,000 square foot space and put a retailer in it, they might have 5 or 6 people on the floor at any given time, maybe 12, 15 employees running 2 different shifts. You take that 5,000 feet and put a restaurant in there, you could have 100 employees in there. And since economic development is very much about not just not just the retail sales tax dollars, but also creating jobs, in the same square footage, we can create a lot more jobs with a restaurant than we can with a retailer. Not that we don't want retailers, but restaurants also produce more sales per square foot. If you take a look at some of our top restaurants, they crush the numbers per square foot that the retailers do. So they produce more sales tax dollars. So we can get more bang for the buck if we're incentivizing restaurants in a 5,000 foot range than retailers in a 5,000 foot range. And we could also show restaurants where in each ward where the customers are coming from. So let's take a look at the Arts District for a second. Ward 1, you may say that if you put a pin in a map on Ward 1 and said, the demographics for this area, a restaurant might say, that's not really my customer. And then we would show them who's shopping at the 5 restaurants that we put in the area, which would be the old Third Culture, which is now Bon and Butter, and Mason's Dumplings, and Bob and Pops, and Lady Justice. We could show that those people are drawing from Stapleton / the new name, Central Park, and Fitzsimmons. Well, the demographic profile of Stapleton, Central Park, and Fitzsimmons are miles past the demographics if you put a pin right on Fletcher Plaza. And that shows that they're drawing from all over. And that gives them the ability to maybe get a much more reasonable rent in the Arts District than going over to Stapleton and paying 2.5, 3 times as much rent and doing similar volumes with the similar customers. So that's kind of how we go after the restaurant community. They also have a hard time understanding who their customer is because they know their customer that walks in, but they don't necessarily have a demographic or psychological or psychographic profile of them, and we can give them that. So we also have the restaurant program, which also looks at qualified candidates to relocate and incubate restaurants in each one of the wards. So that's our restaurant program. Next slide. Meeting with brokers. Okay, brokers are the bridge between the retail community and the development community. When I first got in the business, one of the bigger players, Brinker, which owned Chili's and Macaroni Grill, had 45 real estate reps in-house that knew the whole country. They now have about 5. And what they did was they basically at every downturn, every recession, they got rid of half their staff and then they started using local brokers. So the local brokers have now become the tenant reps and the landlord reps because the landlord reps and tenant reps are too busy. They're trying to actually just manage the brokerage community. So we get information to brokers, brokers get it to tenants, and they get it to developers that we may not be in touch with because they have to get covered. And that's how a broker gets paid. So as an example, brokers call us all the time. We exchange information with them, same what we do with developers. But if brokers are always asking us for information that nobody else knows about, and we generally don't give that stuff out. But if we just found out one from, let's say, maybe Trevor called us and said, hey, I know about this site coming available, we would call a broker and say, hey, this one's in your market. Here's a site that's available, just let you know. Well, they know they're the first one in, and they're going to turn around and put a brochure together and send it out to 5,000 people on their mailing list in a matter of seconds, because that's how they're going to get covered on that. And that's how they're going to get a commission on that. So brokers can get this information out faster than we can get it out, because even if we want to take it out the next day, it would probably take us a few days to put it together. They get it out instantly. And brokers, that's how brokers get paid. So brokers are a big part of our community, and they're an integral part of what we do. And we meet with them out at ICSC also because they're all there. Next slide. Existing centers. So the difference between a developer and existing center operator would be the difference between, let's say, Southlands, which are developers, and the mall, the Aurora Mall, which are existing center owners. So when we're dealing with an existing center owner, they're generally not developers, but they need this kind of information. So we can provide this kind of information, void analysis, our canvassers, placer data to lease individual spaces. But when it comes to development, they're going to bring in a developer. So the mall, when they're trying to do redevelopment, they're actually bringing in other developers to do it because they're really owners of existing centers. They're not really developers. We also help them pursue larger anchor tenants. At this ICSC, we've had some pretty good activity, and we are talking to a few larger anchor tenants, which of course we can't talk about the names right now, but there is a lot of activity right now, especially down in Southlands. We also partner up with innovative marketing ideas, incubation markets, the photo studio idea, which just to remind everybody, we have a photo studio that we can actually bring to a place like Southlands, and they can go from one unit to the next and take all of the pictures and stuff in their stores so that they can be put online and look as good as any national player that has professional pictures online. Kind of evens the playing field for online. And of course, we also offer assistance for redevelopments, and we're constantly peppering them for information on what trends are they seeing, what new concepts are they seeing, and what new players are they talking about in the marketplace. And then we also say if it's a desirable use, we might be able to incentivize you guys. Next slide. Okay, so these are examples of some of the folks that we met with. And these are a lot of the big players that we all know. Each one of them come and meet with us. I will tell you a story about the developers up in the Northeast. When they come to the booth, they brag to their other developer friends that aren't developing in Colorado that they should be developing in Aurora because we have a booth for them. Now, we don't necessarily really have a booth for our development community, but we do allow them to stop by. We do hand out their brochures and we do promote their projects. So when they come over to our booth, they feel like they're home, and there's no other city that does this, as far as we can tell, in the country that gives them this presence. So a developer doing a large project in the Northeast can basically say, I'll meet you at the Aurora booth. They have space for us. And we have 3 little meeting areas here, one private one behind that, the fencing right there. So this is a big service for the development community to be able to go to ICSC, where everyone goes to ICSC, and they don't have to build a booth. They can actually come to our booth and basically bring all of their players here. And of course, we get to sit on their meetings and listen to what they're talking about. So this is the list of this is a list of the handful of the 50 meetings that we had in basically about 14 hours. If you take a look at all day Monday and half a day Tuesday, we had meetings every half an hour. We had 4 different people there. We were understaffed because it turned out we only had 2 openings for walk-ups, and we had a lot of walk-ups. So, and I'll talk about one of those walk-ups. I think I have another slide for that. So next slide. Don't have that slide, so I'll talk about that walk-up right now. We had a person that walked in and said, hi, I'm from the West Coast. I represent this chicken concept. It's called XYZ Chicken, and we want to come to the Front Range. We saw you guys here. We want to talk to you. And we said, okay, tell me what you're looking for. And they said, blah, 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 blah. We are also looking for master plan communities. We're like, wow, son of a gun, we have our iPad right there. We can pull up all of the master plan communities. We started showing them everything we had. They're like, oh my God, this is exactly what we're looking for. Here's my card. Let's talk when we get back from ICSC. An hour and a half later, one of those developers from the Northeast walked in and said, how's it going? We said, hey, we got these folks here that are looking at your development. Here's their business card. Give them a call. That guy looks at us like, wow, thank you. That's great. Now that's about a $50,000 lead if a broker had just brought that in, and we just handed it to him. And so that guy's thrilled. Not only are they thrilled that we have a booth, but we actually help them with their getting connections with the folks that are walking up to us and giving us this broad statement that we want to be in Aurora. So another example of how ICSC works for us. Now, this particular slide is about reinstituting the welcome letter, which we had done in the past, and Jim Tromley had asked us to bring it back again because we really do need to introduce our services to the retail and restaurant community as soon as possible. 90% of the time they call us, it's too late for us to help them because they already got an eviction notice or they have to move in a week. And so we're trying to get to them right at the beginning. So this is a great thing that Jim's asking us to do so that we can show them as soon as they get a business license, we can send them one of these letters that basically outlines everything that we can do for them, including all of what the SBDC can do for them, all of the help that the Chamber of Commerce can do for them, all of the tourism and hospitality information that Visit Aurora can get for them, and anything that we can do in economic development on the retail side. And so that welcome letter has been just approved, and that's going to start going out. We're currently going through the list and pulling out the folks that are more service-oriented businesses that that don't sort of qualify for a lot of the things that we're talking about. Next slide. Okay, and outside of ICSC, what else do we do so that we can help these folks? Well, we do stay in constant communication with all the folks that we meet out there, and we go to the local events. So the Colorado Real Estate Journal puts on a local version of these events where all the local community shows up. We have a much smaller booth that we just purchased that is much more mobile, so we can bring our own booth to those shows instead of having to hire someone to set them up. And of course, the SBDC helps us with our incubation programs. When we get new players that want to come to the market, the SBDC can put them through a program which allows them to understand how to write a business plan, how to do online marketing, which is a new thing that they started after the photo studio came up. SPD stepped up and came up with online marketing classes so that people can figure out how to do it. Basically, everything else, all of the technology we can provide, all of the assistance we can provide, and that's a lot of what we do to keep ICSC's momentum going. Next slide. All right, so that kind of wraps it up. It was a little bit all over the place. It's a lot goes on there. So any questions?
Yeah, well, I would just like to say, I don't see Trevor Vaughn on this call, but tax and licensing had started, they have started communication that is pretty similar to what the state sends out from the Liquor Enforcement Division. And Trevor's just done such a fantastic job of sending these notices out to anybody who has a liquor license in the city. With this welcome letter that you're talking about, I know you're talking about for every new business that opens. I'd like a copy of this letter. I would like to see what all these resources are, and I would like to see if there's a way, maybe we link up with Trevor and actually just put that welcome letter out to all current existing. I know you said you really wanted to focus on the service industry for some of this. So if we could link up with Trevor and get this welcome letter to go out through the correspondence that he's been doing, and he's pretty much mastered at this point, to every liquor license holder in the city, I think that would be really, really helpful. I know that I can tell you, I don't even know what the services are or what is offered to businesses in Aurora. And I don't think we should just start by welcoming new businesses. I think we should send that letter to every current business as well.
I think that's a great idea. And we do deal with Trevor constantly on this. And I think Andrea's got something to add. Andrea?
Councilmember, we can make that happen. We can get a list of businesses. We can put together a letter that's very similar, that kind of lists, hi, we're development services. These are the kinds of services we provide. And we'll be happy to do that and work with Trevor.
That would be great. Thank you. Council members Zvonek and Lawson, do you guys have anything?
I don't.
I just have one question. Thank you for the presentation. Just a question, and I understand that we're having, restaurants are really important, but also, you know, shopping in terms of clothing stores, smaller boutiques. I mean, I know that, you know, retail, people do a lot of online, but there's still to me, some, I guess, wanting of those type of stores or something like that, where people still don't have to go out to Park Meadows or to Cherry Creek or you know, to that mall or to other areas. I mean, when you go to these particular, this particular, I guess, conference, is there any interest of bringing some of those stores to maybe some of the areas that we don't see in Aurora specifically? And I know you said that, you know, restaurants, and I understand that brings people, but also stores as well. Maybe a couple high end, maybe a couple, you know, that could be in Aurora. So you're still not going out to these other communities and you're shopping within Aurora. So has there been some interest, or how does that work to bring those? And I know you look at demographics, but there are some demographics that could support some of those stores that I'm kind of mentioning.
Yeah, council member, when we do our meetings with the owner, the overview here was to give you a sense of the kind of conversations that we have. And we do that. We meet with, and it's not just large centers, large brokers, things like that. We have met with smaller center owners who have vacancies, and part of what our meeting does is talk to them about what kinds of businesses are they looking for? Have they thought about this? We actually interact with them and try to say, have you thought about putting in this kind of business? And the other thing we do, because we have the Small Business Development Center in our offices, we are aware of lots of small businesses who are looking for spaces, and then we can offer them certain incentives for taking, you know, smaller businesses into their shops. And we're looking very closely at providing incentives for smaller businesses that are not credit tenants. A big credit tenant is someone who has a number of places and they have you know, a history of sales and things like that they can show a shopping center owner that says, oh, you know I can pay my rent, blah, blah, blah. So we try to match make, and that's what a lot of our meetings with the owners are about, are some of that matchmaking. And Bob, I didn't know if you wanted to provide some examples or if you had anything to add to that.
Well, yeah, I would like to say I'm sorry if I gave the impression that we were ignoring retail in place of restaurants. Retail is the dominant conversation happening at ICSC, and so we do talk to the anchor tenants. We talk to their brokers. We talk to junior anchors. We do have a couple of them that seem to be hot and heavy to come to Aurora right now. Can't talk about the names yet, but they were new players that we had not known were looking, and not only are they looking, they want to be specifically in Aurora. So you'll see a couple of those coming down the pike in the next 12 months. But we do meet with all of the retail community. The difficulty with the retail community is they compete directly with online selling. So if you're a particular retail store, it used to be that when you saw online sales in a particular market, you wanted to go drop a store there. But now that so many people are shopping online, that we have to try to convince them that, see, your customer's there, you should open a store. And they would say, we're already getting that customer. Why do we need to open a store? And so there's a little bit of a shift with some of these folks trying to go online, trying to open fewer stores, but do more business online. Restaurants aren't in that situation. Restaurants don't necessarily compete with the Amazon of restaurants. They do compete with chains. But restaurants, you know, are having a much bigger issue with delivery and meal replacement and all of these other things that are eaten away, pun intended, at their business. And so we are focused on retail. The two biggest players we're talking about are retail. But I just wanted to make that little presentation about restaurants, because we do have a restaurant program. We probably should be putting together some version of a retail program to address what you're talking about. And I think we just started kind of that conversation a couple of days ago around here. So I'm thrilled at the idea that we may be able to put together a program for retailers.
Well, that would be nice. I mean, I understand, people are going online, but I also know that I've lived here for 21 years and I have not really seen the diversity or just different trends of mix of retail. And I do have to admit, a lot of people that I know, including myself, I hate to admit this, goes to retail sometimes outside of this because there's no diversity of stores where people can go from different economic brackets, or if you choose to. So some people are going to Cherry Hills because they have Zara's, they have different places. Some people are going to Park Meadows. So I hope that might be something to consider a retail, just so we can have more of a mix of just more retail. And I know we're competing with online, but I still think it's important with the city with so much different diversity. Shopping is still important. So thank you for that.
I totally agree. And by the way, the names you're mentioning are money, meaning they don't show up without throwing money at them. So yeah, that's, if we want to start going after the better names, we probably should focus on this program about retailers, because we do have a restaurant program right now, but we don't have a program that parallels this for retail. So, but great suggestion.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I have one, please.
Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Bob, for the presentation. I know you guys, ICSC is fantastic for us to bring, retailers and so forth to Aurora. My question is, on the placer data with the heat map, can you track who goes from Aurora to Park Meadows?
Sure.
I would love to see that, because I just know, kind of following on Councilmember Lawson's concern, is it's great that we get all the sales in the city, but there's a lot of sales that actually leave and go to, those other centers. So I'd like to see that data.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. The next meeting is scheduled for August 10th at 8:30 in the morning. And with that, have a great day. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.